Yeah, everybody needs a Christmas list.
Are we set? Okay.
Good thing you don't have a big old truck to run us over with.
I got a big old truck.
He does. He's got
They have stickers all over it.
he's got a couple of them. All right, well, let's
But
start.
I got bumpers that kill a shell dang.
Start the planning commission with a roll call, please.
Margaret Bowles,
Katie Souls.
Brian Cirkbenek. Bob Canisi.
Joy McCoy,
And Andy Miller.
Thank y'all for putting up with me.
Thanks,
Thank
Bobby.
you. Thanks for coming.
Okay, so a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, open forum for the planning commission. Anybody online or,
Commissioner, we missed the minutes, the consent agenda.
oh, sorry, consent agenda, sorry. I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, which are the minutes of January 15th, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
The second was Margaret? Yeah, no worries. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, so now open forum. Thanks, Antoinette. Anybody for open forum for the planning commission? It doesn't look like we have anybody online. Well, one person, but any open forum items? Okay, so we need to open a public hearing to consider the Ascent major site plan and final plat. A motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, so staff report.
Thank you, Commissioners, Chair. Alan Sealiff again, Assistant Town Planner. One second here.
And so, Alan, I think, quite a bit of this, when we were all here, and I think the public could, if we could be a little fairly brief, could we be about that? 'Cause a
I
lot
will
of this was-
certainly attempt it.
Is that okay? Yeah,
Yeah.
just a slightly,
Yeah, and
edited, slightly condensed version.
if there's, stop me if there's a point that I need to go back over, but I will attempt to.
So maybe
Yeah,
for the
what-
public, explain that if there is anybody out there that wasn't here, that
Right,
we already
right,
reviewed
yeah.
all of this.
Yeah,
Our
and if anybody in
adjustment.
the public has questions during the public, we'll open this up for public comment and they can ask those questions at that time, and we'll basically cover the high points, but
I'll still give the
Yeah.
basic intro, at least
Yeah.
to flash the slides up, but I'll move on without a whole lot until the new content of
thanks, Alan.
the site plan. Okay, again, presenting today on the Ascent condominiums, the final plat and major site plan portion of this request. Located at 601 South Xerix, the proposed land uses, just to summarize, the merits for this case are a new building with 17 new multifamily units, and then conversion of the existing exports building with 6 additional units for a total of 25. Here's the location, and this one does differ slightly in that it shows the boundaries of the full extent of the subdivision impacted. So this is the full extent of lots 1 and 2 as currently platted. Excuse me. Same submittal and review timelines, obviously, originating in May of the past year. 2 review cycles were able to be accommodated before tonight's public hearing. Public notice, noticed separately from the variance for the planning commission, but consistent with noticing requirements in the Sky High News, Middle Park Times, and then applicant mailed notices. Again, the existing conditions photo, we need to reference this later on, but the existing building with the proposed building just to the left here. And then the same 2 development renderings as shown during the height variance request from opposite sides of the building. So this slide shows the proposed subdivision plat, specifically labeling the lots. The current configuration is just lots 1 and 2. This proposed subdivision is going to create a new lot 3. So that's why we suggested sequentially naming it and numbering it for lot 3. the majority of it is being carved out of the previous lot one, but the southeast side of lot three is slightly larger than where lot one was previously. So this is shrinking lot two effectively by 0.2 acres, I believe was the measurement. Again, the proposed site plan, we'll go over different components of the site plan review on the later slides here. And again, the zoning map for context of just the existing business zone for this lot, adjacent lots, and then the PD zoning for Grand Park to the south. So getting into the zoning and land use kind of higher level review of this, we've got the intent statement of the business district, which speaks to providing for a variety of commercial uses. Obviously, residential isn't necessarily referenced in the intent statement, but the proposed multifamily use is a use by right already in the business district. This isn't a rezoning application, so we don't necessarily need to spend too much attention to the intent statement since we're not proposing changing the existing zoning or the existing rights on the property. And then just further, the future land use map currently adopted in the 2010 comp plan, but shows this entire area as mixed use. So that speaks to envisioning additional residential uses in the area. Reviewing kind of just the checklist of different zoning requirements in the business district zone. These top four we're confirming they meet the site plan and the plat meet these standards. So no issues identified with lot size, lot width, setbacks, or floor area. Obviously, this presentation was prepared before the variance, so at the time building height was not met, but now with that variance being granted, we can state that the proposed building height is in conformance with the approved maximum of 49.5 feet. And then we've got open space minimum of 35% labeled here. It's a very small discrepancy, measurement discrepancy, but I'll outline that, and it should be an insurmountable obstacle. So to start talking through kind of different considerations of the full review and the site plan proposed development, starting a higher level of site access. The existing street serving the Ski Broker Exports building is John's Drive, which is kind of oriented in a curved existing street. So it goes from County Road 72 there on the left and curves up to Highway 40, both named John's Drive. And then, through the review, it was evident that there's a street name discrepancy with the current connection or the future connection to be formalized between John's Drive and Old Victory Road. There's construction plans that were associated with the Elk Creek condos development to the south in Grand Park that depict this future road connection as John's Drive. The different sources, Google Maps, I think, and the county assessor shows it as Victory Road. It originally came to our attention because the fire district commented on not having a 3-point intersection of all segments being John's Drive. So rather than have them officially label it as Victory Road, we were concerned that that was also very similar to Old Victory Road and suggested a new name. The applicants proposed Twilight Drive to rename this segment, and then additionally to change the portion of the existing John's Drive from that intersection point to County Road 72 so that the full kind of east-west alignment of the road is consistently named Victory or Twilight Drive, excuse me. And we're on board with that pending any comments or concerns from Planning Commission or the board. Additional notes on site access. So the proposed lot 3 is going to, well, both lots 1 and 3 are proposed to have a cross access and parking easement across the drive aisles and parking areas between both lots. So essentially that'll afford access, guaranteed access to existing John's Drive for lot 3. And then additionally, an extension of the drive aisle and some additional parking, I believe it's 4 spaces, are proposed to be on the adjacent portion of lot 2, just to the right of the proposed ascent building. So taken as a whole, access will be available from John's Drive and the future Twilight Drive once right of way is dedicated or access easement is dedicated and then the road is constructed on the south end of the site. Oh, and additionally, I think it's on this one for parking. So minimum requirements, we're taking the development as a whole for the proposed 25 units. Required ratio of 1.5 spaces for 2-bedroom units, which they're all proposed to be 2-bedroom units, would be rounded up to 38 spaces. 36 spaces are accommodated across these 3 lots, including the small portion on lot 2 there. And then 2 additional parallel parking spaces are proposed on Twilight Drive. There's a kind of a caveat in the code that allows off-street parking to be counted towards required, as a development's required parking, which we're in support of. The letter of the code states that it's only to be applied in the older sections of the business district, which are generally defined as west and north of Highway 40 and the County Road 72/804 intersection, so the Safeway intersection. So it doesn't technically apply on this lot. So we needed to flag it, but we're in support of applying it here. We think it's consistent with kind of best practice of minimizing unnecessary parking, larger parking lots than are needed based on the minimum code requirements. Regarding open space, so I mentioned that the 35%, we do not believe the 35% open space requirement was being met. The provided open space plan shows a calculation that meets the exact square footage requirements of 35%. However, kind of confirming that all of the areas depicted in the hashed area meet our definition of open space. We found that these couple of landscape islands or hashed off islands in the parking lot do not meet it. They're not of sufficient width as required in the code, and they weren't shown in the landscape plan as including actual landscaping. It looked like they were just hashed off. So we believe once these are accommodated with additional parking lot islands, that 35% will be easily be met. In addition to kind of the following suggestion or following item we identified regarding landscaping. All right, 1 second. So the landscape plan is proposed. The overall requirements are being met in terms of coverage of 15% of the lot area is being met. There's additional tree and shrub requirements based on the required landscaping. Calculations are showing that's all being met, so no issues there. There's additional landscape requirements specifically related to parking lots that we had to flag as part of the review. These relate to parking lot perimeter landscaping requirements and then parking lot island landscaping requirements in order to break up large expanses of parking and provide buffer from adjacent street frontages or properties. It was explained as part of the initial review and response process that constraints with existing utility easements, potential drainage concerns are factors for why landscaping would not be possible along the Highway 40 street frontage here in the trail. We do disagree. In terms of looking at alternatives or accommodating design, we think that the drive aisle adjacent to the parking can be reduced. It's currently depicted at kind of varying widths of greater than the minimum. Our minimum in the code is 24 feet. I believe the fire districts would be 26 feet, which would take precedence. But in either case, the parking should be able to be drawn back from the property line, even if it's a few feet, 2 to 4 to potentially greater distances, especially on the right side here as the curve of the right of way kind of widens out. I believe we measured it up to 35 or 36 feet width down there. We believe that can be drawn in and kind of made a tighter drive aisle in order to accommodate some level of parking lot perimeter landscaping that addresses the intent of the requirement. Snow storage calculations were provided. The requirement is 3 square feet or 1 square foot of snow storage area for 3 square feet of areas to be cleared. The exhibit shows the hatched areas accommodate the required snow storage amounts. We just have one comment on there about, since these are shared lots, lots 1 and 3, in terms of functionality and not delineating the different snow storage, that unless each lot individually can accommodate its required snow storage, that or snow storage easements should be included as part of approval of the plat. Exterior lighting is included as part of the site plan submittal. For the most part, these are existing lights highlighted here in yellow, so that shows up okay on the screen. But there's a number of existing lights on the exterior of the parking lot along Highway 40 and along the trail. Proposed to be no changes, and then 2 lights on the bottom half or southwest half of the lot that are proposed to be relocated to accommodate the buildings, and then some additional building lighting, mainly focused on that internal kind of exposed hallway area, stairwell area of the new building. Photometrics weren't provided at this stage, and lighting details weren't provided at this stage until final electrical plans are to be created, but those will be required as part of the building permit submittal. Building elevations, obviously we've spent time on these with the previous case for the height variance. We'll just comment here that in terms of exterior design material requirements, our code is technically pretty lenient in terms of application for a fully residential building in the business district. Our building design requirements only apply to commercial or mixed use developments, but are still encouraged obviously to meet. And we did review it against those criteria anyway, just to provide kind of the check and any guidance, and found that the building design was very much in conformance. I believe we had one comment about additional ground level masonry, but they do require or do include additional like stone veneer and masonry uses at higher floors. So we believe the intent of the the material variety is all being met. Again, this is a subdivision plat. I just wanted to bring this back up as a reference point for the next slide. So this is the current existing condition essentially. One item that we flagged has to do with this transit license area that's depicted across Lot 2, connecting the existing Johns Drive and Old Victory Road. It's a 45-foot width area. It's not labeled as an easement or as right-of-way obviously yet, so it is pretty unique. It originally wasn't shown on the plat, and we requested that all existing dimensions, easements, whatnot be carried forward, since this will be effectively the new subdivision plat for Lot 2. It's overriding the previous one. Request this being moved forward. The applicant is now labeling it as being vacated by this plat. And we recognize that eventually, when Twilight Drive is built, it'll be dedicated as right of way. This connection will be made and formalized. So long term, it'll be there. But we don't necessarily have guarantees on the timing of the recordation of this plat versus the construction of the road or any access or right of way dedication. So we're requiring that this be carried forward, at least for the purposes of this plat, and as described as a terminable license agreement between the parties by the applicant. We're not privy to that agreement necessarily, but in terms of what we can control with the plat, we're going to ask that this be carried forward.
Wait, just to clarify, I'm sorry. What is that exactly? It's a transit.
It's where the bus goes.
Yeah, it's
but-
utilized by
yeah.
the Lyft bus system,
Oh,
and
okay.
one of their lines traverses it from Old Victory to Johns
I
currently.
gotcha.
Also regarding the subdivision portion of this request, in terms of our staff review of it, we found that land dedication or fees in lieu as appropriate are applicable. Code states that they're applicable to any new residential subdivision. Recognizing that this site has been previously platted, originally platted in the 1980s as part of development that largely did not occur, and then subsequent plat amendments, portions of site have developed, but we're requesting that the new impacts be accounted for essentially in terms of the additional units and the additional developed lots, so that in this case, it'll just be the change in area between the previous lot 1 and the new lots 1 and 3 is what we're requesting as part of this subdivision. And then future development would be, we still see as applicable to this as new development.
Right.
So we'll be including this as a condition of approval, or recommended condition of approval at least. Finally, the request for the site plan itself is subject to these 5 review or approval criteria. Number 1, that the proposed site development meets all requirements of the chapter. Currently, our finding is not at this time, but outlining, identifying the deficiencies and then including them as recommended conditions of approval. Believe that we could meet this criteria should those conditions be brought forward, which will be outlined on the next slide and it's included in the draft resolution. Number 2, that the proposed site developments in conformance with the comprehensive plan. We find that it does meet this criteria. 3, that lot size, dimensions, and setbacks are all consistent with what's shown on the final plat and zone district requirements. Obviously, the final plat is going concurrently with this, so we'll make sure that that development is consistent with it, and then the underlying zone district requirements are being met. 4, that no buildings or structures infringe on any easements. The plat is proposing to vacate portions of existing utility easements that would be underneath the proposed building. Those are proposed to be vacated and relocated eventually. That infrastructure is part of the construction plans for Twilight Drive, and the designs are already previously approved. It's just final construction. We find that this criteria is met. And then lastly, the proposed site grading is consistent with the requirements of any applicable storm drainage criteria or drainage plans. Again, these discussion on this topic is included as part of Merrick as the town engineer's review comments. There's still outstanding review comments associated with the engineering review, but as these will be covered as part of the general condition that all review comments are addressed. So with that, staff is recommending approval subject to the following conditions. These are summarized based on the draft resolution included in the packet. But again, they cover the kind of the topics flagged as part of these slides, including, all referral comments, the carrying forward that transit license area, meeting maximum height. Actually, this one we'll be able to remove. So Garrett hopefully can strike that from the resolution before we go forward with that. I failed to address this one, but the trash enclosure. So as part of the landscape plan and landscape requirements, screening of trash areas is required as part of new development. There is an existing trash area shown. I can go back on the site plan if necessary, but essentially there was an enclosure proposed with the initial submittal that has since been removed with the second submittal, and we're not in agreement that that's appropriate. The requirements of trash screening apply to new development, so we want to make sure that it's covered here in the approval conditions. And then going through kind of more standard conditions of approval related to fees in lieu, items required as part of the subdivision checklist.
Ellen, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So where are those on the resolution that I have in my hand? Or were they added? I printed this out last night.
They should be on there. I guess we can double check. Gary, do you have the actual resolution? We'll flash it up after my presentation here, but there should be
Okay.
8 conditions of
Okay, good.
approval included.
Yeah, Commissioner Souls, if you're looking at Planning Commission Resolution 2025-0201,
202.
okay, that's for the next item.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yes, but for 0201, it has the exact same conditions of approval in the resolution as presented here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And then just last point of including as the last condition here is the duration of approval. Recommending it's included to just state, referencing the town code, that it'd be 1 year from approval of the Board of Trustees. So that'd be the final approval of this case. And as a major site plan, they're limited to 1 year in duration after final approval. I believe that's it. Yep. Happy to answer any questions on these specifics or again, following the applicant presentation.
Okay, any questions for staff? Take the applicant's presentation. You can hobble up to the lectern a little bit faster there if you would.
You needed to
some-
be elevating while you were sitting here and now
Some
it's got all
cowboy
flat
boot
on
you
you.
got on there, Clark.
Tell you what, not fun. I highly recommend stretching before skiing at my age. It did not happen. Right, Clark Lipscomb, with Cornerstone for the record.
Layla Rosales with Terracina Design. We'll be quick. I promise. Well, I'll be quick.
Yeah.
Okay. This is the plat again. Alan just showed this on. I just kind of wanted to show this on the screen. Oh, keep going. Again, site plan rendered. Okay, the name that wasn't on my screen. Site plan, again, we talked about this previously, not a lot of changes here. I want to run to the next slide. Because as Clark mentioned a little bit earlier, we would like to request that we looked at lot 1, which is the existing building, spent some time doing some architecture, realized that the additional 6 units would just be too big. There's a lot more square footage than I think we were expecting. So we would like to increase that to 8 units in that existing building.
8 additional.
Yes, 8 additional units, so 10 total. And we understand with that, that means the lot is going to have to get a little bit bigger. And so what you're looking at here is there's a red line. And you can't see my mouse, but there's a red line on the lower right-hand side of the screen. That's kind of where that lot would adjust to. And then some additional parking would be accommodated adjacent to it.
So with that, we're asking that in the resolution that you guys document that it'll be 27 residential units between the 2 lots at 1.35 acres. It's a like very slight lot line. We're basically doing a lot line adjustment is what this plat is and creating a new lot with land that we own adjacent to it. So it makes sense and we need housing and we're trying to address that with this project. So
We apologize for this late notice. This was something we just talked about here in the last couple of days. So I know, Garrett, that I keep throwing stuff at you. Keeping things interesting. I wouldn't want you to be bored. Okay, so that is one request that we've got on this. Got some renderings here, but I'm just gonna kind of go past those. My computer will let me. Come on. Cool. Okay, I'm gonna jump to the conditions of approval. And there's actually only a couple that we'd like to talk a little bit about. And
skip to those.
yep, they're coming. They're coming. So we basically took all 8 and
So I'll start with the first one on the license agreement. That should not be shown on this plat. It's a license. Kent can back me up on this. It's a permissive agreement. It's not a recorded easement. It's a written document that can be revoked by the town of Fraser or me with 30-day written notice. We built this road. We kind of cowboyed it in, not with boots like this, but we cowboyed it in for the transit to accommodate a request the town had. And my company put it in, built it in, and literally, scraped the topsoil, slammed in the gravel, the road base, et cetera. It was never meant to be permanent. And the transit license, we're happy with the transit license. I don't have any intention of changing or deleting the transit license at this time. And once there's a right-of-way connection through here, then it would formally get terminated, probably by us or the town or both. But we don't want to have a license agreement that's not a land use right, like an easement shown on a plat. It shouldn't be. And as I said, it's permissive through a written agreement. Importantly, 4W.1 construction plans for the Elk Creek condos phase 2 That realigns, Twilight Road. Now it's an easement in that one, but presumably once built, and when we figure out the balance of Meyer Lot 2, that gets granted as a right of way. And while we're building that, we will be having to close the transit route temporarily. We've done that before. We'll just coordinate with the transit system and the town, and it works pretty good. But we would like that condition to be removed because we think it puts kind of a cloud on the title. And I don't know, what do you think, Kent?
You know, I'm not familiar with this transit license. I can speak generally to licenses. They are revocable. That's the distinction between a license and an easement. They can go away by the party that's benefited. If it covers a tract of ground that's being used for transit purposes, and ultimately it's contemplated that that will be made a permanent route, but you want flexibility to establish that location in the future, it's probably okay to not show it on the plat, but have that agreement in place for an ultimate permanent easement to go in place.
And we
Well,
just, we
At
need a
some,
connection there.
at some
obviously, yeah.
location, yeah.
Yeah, and what I would just ask, just to put it on here, or if you want to put something, subject to further review with the town lawyer, that would be fine. Because Garrett could send him I think it's a 2-page transit license, if I remember. It's quite simple. And it was literally at the onset of the bus system coming, and the town needed to, because of where the buses could turn and how they could turn, et cetera, they needed to connect through there. And so we accommodated. And again, we like the bus system. We want to support the bus system. We don't have any intention of eliminating a road, and we're going to develop on both sides of this. But the reason it was a license was for complete flexibility. So.
And so, yeah, and Clark, our main interest is not just the bus system, it's to make sure that connection continues wherever it is. Because a lot of us have come to depend on it too with traffic and everything.
I understand.
So,
It's an important conviction. And one of the reasons that we cowboyed it in there like we did, kind of when we did it, we're like, not a big deal. We'll just straight shot across here. And I think everybody recognizes it's pretty important, particularly if something happened on the highway, it creates kind of an alternative route. And it's necessary, not in that alignment, for our future plans, for what's laid out on Meyer Lot 2, et cetera. And it'll get formalized when we get to that level. But it just doesn't belong on this plat as a license.
Yeah, just so some kind of note on the plat though that says that this connection continues to exist at your discretion as to where it is. So anyway,
I don't know, let's just work with the town lawyer on how to properly do it, just kind of legally, so that it's, very clear. I mean, we have to have dual access, Andy.
Oh,
through
yeah,
this parcel for what
Sure.
we're gonna develop on either side,
sure.
which is gonna be more residential,
Yeah.
so. I think we have already an approved construction plan for the road corridor that is permanently gonna go through there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the to be vacated note on the plat was just an error on our part. I'm gonna let you talk about
Trash.
trash.
The trash of
His
Fraser.
favorite topic.
Oh my goodness. Katie Souls, you might remember my trash of Fraser PowerPoint, the dumpster enclosure issue PowerPoint. You remember that? 2009, beginning
Okay,
2015.
which number are we looking at here?
This is on dumpster enclosures. Okay. And yeah, I think I build the nicest dumpster enclosures
You do, yeah.
perhaps in the state of Colorado. I don't know. They're really expensive.
So why don't you want one here?
Well, here's what we want to see. What we want to see is we want to see the code enforced on the Fraser Valley Center. We want these dumpsters. These are in the town roads right away. And they've proliferated. They've gotten worse even since I've owned Ski Broker. It's a real problem, guys. The code's really clear. That's what the 09 presentation was about and the 2015 presentation is about. And we'd really like to see a condition that says when this adjacent property is cleaned up, we'll be glad to install a dumpster enclosure. These are all part of the Forest Meadow Solar subdivision, but the Fraser Valley Center needs to probably do a compaction dumpster down on the north end of its project where it was intended to be. But this road's going to start to get more and more heavy use as we develop Meyer Lot 2. And, God bless the people that sit out back at Rocky Mountain Roastery and enjoy the view, but sitting next to shipping containers and trash, and I know who it is. Trust me, I got your back, Katie. I'm trying to clean it up, have nice aspen trees hanging out there, and you have your coffee with no trash. But you know, you guys have a code enforcement officer. You got 2 planners now. And I think it's appropriate that if we're going to impose this on this project, that it have a condition that it be imposed on the Fraser Valley Center, which they are all part of the original plan. And that we implement an enclosure once theirs is cleaned up and addressed. And
That's, I get what you're after, Clark, very much so. But how the heck do we relate this project to a problem next door?
well,
And we do need to enforce our code. We take your message loud and clear, but we can't have new projects coming along that say, we're not gonna live with the code, because these guys over here aren't. You know, that's, that road is the same road I traveled at my daycare talking about the kids. You know, if Johnny's got a 6-shooter, why the hell don't I have?
Yeah.
You know, but you get what I mean. I mean,
I get what
yeah,
you mean, and I appreciate that. But I think what we're saying is we don't want to not follow the code. We do want to follow the code.
well, then do.
But we want to give the town some impetus to make the adjoining neighbor follow the code too and correlate the two. Like, let's link them, right? I mean, if it's good for the goose, it's good for the
We got
gander.
the Fraser Valley Manager Center. sitting
I was
right
gonna
back
say,
there.
Parnell, what can you do about that problem?
Yeah, we'll get him during public comment. He's like, oh my God, he's spending our money. I mean, the fact of the matter is, they don't have permission to have this stuff in the town right of way. And it is in the town right of way, a lot of it. And that's an easy one for y'all to clean up.
Okay, well, we got a long agenda tonight.
I understand, but I mean, this is just an issue that we would like to have addressed. I mean, look, I cannot and won't go put up, you know, the serious big concrete, stone, beautiful structures that we put on the other stuff. You know, I can agree, you know, I'll throw up a wood fence around this, which I think meets the code, you know, but
Well, if that's the way you're gonna make your point, that we'll have to live with that. But,
well,
yeah.
but I mean, I still want to advocate and encourage that, you know, we, you know, try to address this issue. I mean, it's a problem all over town. Okay. So I'm using this as the impetus to say, guys, come on.
But that
You
is
know.
probably the biggest one.
It's
biggest
that
problem.
is a bad one.
Yeah.
I mean,
There's
there's
a lot
other
of
ones,
traffic
but this
through
is
there.
one of the
And the
biggest.
road's so narrow.
Yeah, anyway, let's,
it's
yeah,
tough.
okay.
Okay. Thank you
Have to
for
say.
Yeah.
listening to me on that.
So the next piece that we'd like to, or I'll talk about here is also item 4, and this has to do with the landscape treatment along Highway 40 that Alan brought up previously.
Mhm.
So what I did here is I just quick and dirty section showing kind of how much space we really have and really what this thing looks like. And I'll focus kind of on the right side of the screen here, but you've got a about 1.2 feet between the curb and our property line. And then from there, you go down into a swale, which takes you to the trail. And then you've also got all sorts of utility lines running through there,
Is the,
light poles.
okay, so the trail.
The trail is on the right side where it says existing
Thank
trail,
you.
yep. And so our concern that we brought up in a couple of times with staff is, and it's the 26-foot drive is what we show. You suggested reducing it down to 24, but fire did say that any buildings over 30 feet need a 26-foot fire lane. So that kind of took care of that. And we've got, you know, utilities, drainage, snow removal. I mean, think about how that's going to get piled with snow from snow removal, not just from the parking lot, but from the trail itself as well. So I understand why the code is written that way. I mean, I agree with screening parking all day long. I'm a landscape architect, that's what I do. But in this instance, there just isn't the room. And so we are improving the parking lot. We're putting curb and gutter. We're cleaning up, you know, that frontage there from what it looks like today. But again, throwing shrubs in there, they're gonna die. They're not gonna make it. You know, so it just seems
So would that,
silly.
I have a question. Would that be useful though by changing that, allowing for a little more open space in there and planting something? And wait, let me hear me out. And pulling out the fingers that are coming into your lot, because those seems like the ones that are gonna mess with your snow removal.
So if this were retail, I would be severely pushing back on this and saying, guys, not a chance. I need people to see our business. Like that frankly makes no sense. I actually advocate for and would like more screening and more landscaping. The building's built where it is and the parking lot is designed and built like it is. And, you know, I've even challenged her on, you know, can't we get exactly what you're talking about? A little more out the front, because some of the layouts from the architects are using some of those existing storefronts for entries, right? Trying to back units up and make it efficient so you don't have big hallways and things like this. So in that building, you know, I think the success of it's going to be dependent upon, you know, how we can kind of dress up that very front. Cause right now it's very sterile. I mean, that picture's awful that's up there. It drives me nuts. The bad parking lot. There is a cobble rock corridor that's between our curb and between the trail that has not been very well maintained. I think we do have the right and the ability to go maintain it, even though part of it's in the right of way. I don't think anybody's going to complain. And I think we can make that look better. Some of the islands that are there are actually for power lines and guy wires, because this also has overhead power lines over it.
Yeah.
So planting any trees or shrubs, I mean, I've seen them come through with a chainsaw in front of BMO and cut the tops off, right? Because everything gets big and they can't have that. So this is one of these things that we like landscaping and we want good amount of landscaping around this project. It's something we just can't accommodate in this particular section. We just don't think it's reasonable and feasible, because when they come through and plow the trail, they use that area plowing the trail too. Like we both plow snow there, right? So it's, nothing is going to live there, which is why it looks like it does. But I do think, particularly once the parking lot's redone and we have a nice curb, that we can make it more xeriscape friendly looking, nicer looking. And I would love to try to tighten up and create a little bit more of undulation in front of the very straight building. And I'm, you know, probably leave that to her and say, you know, is there anything you can come up with? Because I mean, frankly, it might even be nice from a protection perspective. We will have a curb because we'll be grading the parking lot differently. So there'll be a curve because we don't want cars running into the building.
The
So
building side.
I mean, you know, it's in our interest to make this thing look really good. And it's a remodel of an existing building. So we kind of have a lot of what we have and there's only so many things we can do. So we're going to try to enhance and really dress it up every way we possibly can. But we can't do it in that strip.
Clark, on that one of the plats that showed, does the trail come onto your property up near the north end? Or
No, it's off. It's in the right of way.
is it?
It's the one,
Okay.
it gets on our property, Andy, the easement is past Vicious Cycle where the
Right.
trail curves.
Okay, that's where.
And
it's
then
in.
from
Yeah.
that curve, which is around that pole,
Yeah,
from that curve all the way down past my office to Winter Park, it's on our land. It's an easement
yeah.
with the
okay,
town from
okay,
that point, but
Yeah.
otherwise it's in the CDOT right.
Okay,
So I guess we'd ask in that instance, is that condition maybe be modified a little bit to just say, you know, we'll work with staff to the best of our ability to provide as much landscaping as we can. But I think that their request was to meet the 1 tree and 2 shrubs for every 20 feet. Now, or shrubs, the equivalent of 2 to 1. So that we did the math, it was like 70 shrubs in that location, which is a little bit more than I think we can accommodate there. So I guess as long as we're given some direction to, you know, do the best we can, you know, that's what I guess we're asking for there. The rest of the conditions we're fine with. I think Clark had a question about market value
On
on the fee in lieu.
the school impact fee, how that's determined.
So I can speak to that. That was a value that was used on projects since 2023. Rose Lake, Strom Townhomes, the 461 Muse Townhomes here in Old Town. I recognize that that's not a codified market value acreage, but it was something that was arrived at on previous projects, and town staff believes we can utilize it moving forward for other applicable developments, you know, to calculate that fee in lieu amount.
Okay, well, market values change all the time and they're, you know, dependent on properties and conditions of properties, the state of the properties, et cetera. So what I would like to ask on that particular one, I'm all for schools. I still want a 6 through 12 school down here, even though my kids aren't here. I think it's important. I think it's critical to the growth of our community. And I think what I would like to see in that regard is something to the effect of the applicant will work with the staff to determine the market value to use per acre for the school in Luffy. If that's acceptable to you all. In other words,
Isn't it
rather than
already
have it
set?
stated,
Is that fee already set?
no,
the market
there's a formula,
Okay.
Katie, that's set.
Yeah.
The variable in it is the valuation of the land. And that's not something that you would ever set because it changes and every property has different values and there's different conditions. And so what I would just ask is let us just work with the staff to better understand that. I mean, perhaps it's fine. I'd just like to see how they derived it and how it correlates to our property. Cause it's a theoretical vacant land valuation, correct?
Yeah, and I believe it was based on the entire county, not just,
Okay.
you know, the Fraser
Yeah,
area, but
so,
yeah.
again, it may be fine, but I would just ask that, you know, we note in there, we're gonna pay the school impact fee. We just want to work with the staff to determine what that fee should be based on the formula that is codified.
Yeah, just work with staff on that.
So is that something,
Or right here.
but if it's codified,
No, it's not.
It's not a codified
Very
acreage
whatever.
value. The formula is approved through a resolution from 1998.
okay.
So
Just
that
the
doesn't
value of the
exist,
land Changes, yeah.
right? But yes, that value per acre is the key variable in question here.
Then I'll
Percentage of
just
the value.
also add that the school district, I think, has recently done some commission to study or is working on updating. I don't know if it'd be a requirement dictated by the school district or if it's a suggested amount, but that would be something that we'd want to refer to if we're gonna kind of go back to the drawing board and assess the dedication fees.
Well, we're not talking about going back to the drawing board. What we're saying is we want to understand your market value and how you derived it. That's it. The school board can do what they want. They don't have any jurisdiction over Fraser, with all due respect. And they changed their code structure on fee in lieu. I want to say it was like right before COVID, and I think if I remember right, but I remember Fraser did not adopt it. That Fraser was happy with the structure that was in place, which
Oh,
is the 1998 one. So again, we're happy to pay it. I just want to understand how the market value per acre was derived.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's all we have. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Clark, I did appreciate your note on there for xeriscape or sustainable landscaping. I hope eventually the whole town can move that direction. We're running out of water and we don't need to be.
And that was
we
another
just changed
concern
it.
I
We
brought
gotta
up with
shut the
her.
fees per 1,000 gallons in view of that, so.
Yeah, that was a concern I brought up with Leila. I'm like, how am I gonna, I got our water out there now to
Yeah.
make this stuff live, but then it's
Yeah.
gonna get crushed with snow plows and,
Yeah,
I mean, it just,
yeah,
you know, there's certain places where landscaping is really appropriate.
yeah,
And you know, my office is a great example. I mean, we have a huge lawn area there with
Yeah.
nothing. But we have some really nice landscaped islands where the trees are getting really big now and they have nice shrubs
yeah,
and they're protected from the snow removal operations.
Yeah.
But they really complement and accentuate the building. So, I
Gotta
mean, I
make it
think there's
work, yeah.
appropriate spots and ways that we can address it, just not in that strip.
And we have plenty of, well, getting less moisture every year, but still plenty of moisture to raise nice vegetation, so.
Thank you all for your time tonight. We appreciate it.
So is that landscape strip a code requirement? And to waive it is, we don't need a variance.
Uh, It is a code requirement, but the actual specifications that are referenced as far as square footage of landscaping per area, or number of parking spaces, those actually exist in chapter 14, our construction standards. So really allowing a variance to them is an administrative
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
approval.
goodness. Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
So do we want to just remove that whole sentence about the site challenge will also reduce the width of the drive aisle adjacent to Highway 40?
well, they're looking at that and that's.
Right,
let's
they're
leave that
looking at it.
Let's leave that language in there, because even she laid it out, it can be done. But
Okay.
what it results with as far as setback off the property line is what.
Well,
Clear
and
the
the
plan.
question about leaving out the landscaping over in accordance with. That's the issue.
I think I just want to clarify something, and I think what I was trying to address in what Layla was trying to say, maybe with Alan's idea, there is a little variation. There's a little bit. So what we would prefer and what we think makes sense is we leave the curb line where it is along the trail, dress up the xeriscape there, and we try to create more of a buffer in front of the building,
Mhm.
where currently I think it's a 5-foot sidewalk.
Yeah.
And that, maybe that undulates, which actually could soften it and
Yeah,
to me, make it way nicer from a
Mhm.
residential entry perspective.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I was talking about. I just wanted to clarify that for you
Maybe
guys.
put out a picnic table or something for those folks.
You
to
never
play
know.
on, and play for the kids to play.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Fun
that makes
color.
sense.
okay.
Okay.
Hey, Clark, while you're up there,
Okay.
because your foot, don't want you up and down.
No, it's fine.
With Twilight Drive, and this is only semi-related, but is your plan to have like a sidewalk or a trail parallel to that?
Yeah, so Twilight Drive has in the 4W.1 approved construction drawings. It is a 60-foot wide collector road. 60-foot wide collector road. So we did all the traffic studies on it and agreed we would do a 60-foot wide collector road. We actually have parallel parking capability designed, but not required by us, because Vicious Cycle has a parking problem, Murdoch's. The town's asked, would y'all consider this? So we laid in a road with valley pans and parallel parking along there, which actually works very nice. And then correct me, is it a sidewalk on one side, Layla? Or is it on both on that one? It's on both. It can't, I mean, it's a 60-foot wide corridor, so it's, it's quite wide.
Gotcha.
But I know that we show what we're required to build in the construction drawings, but then we provide in an exhibit to the town of an alternative that if, they could figure out how to fund it. Because we don't need the parking at the present moment. I mean, maybe the new designs of 2W might need the parking, in which case we would suggest we go put it in and have parallel parking along there. But otherwise, we just want to make sure we could accommodate it for primarily Vicious Cycle, which has very little parking, which we knew would be an issue when they built it. But the answer is yes. It's designed very pedestrian oriented because we're going to be dropping another 150 roughly units next to this. I mean, that's a lot of units to absorb, but we are going to be filling from this building to the Elk Creek condos where our equipment yard's going away. That all is going to be residential.
Got it.
Be great for the businesses that are there. It's gonna be really good for the businesses that are there, I think. So,
Okay.
okay.
Cool. Thank you for that.
Any other questions for applicant and so any members of the public on that like to make a comment?
So number 4.
Okay.
Changing.
So a motion to close the public hearing.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so any further discussion from the commission?
So Alan and Garrett, any thoughts for you about the landscaping after a discussion?
I can speak to it a little bit. I think, the applicant's proposal to modify the sidewalk width in front of the buildings such that there's a consistent 26 feet drive aisle here and you don't have it bowing out at the end here, is understood and appreciated. I recognize that's certainly more feasible than trying to say, have two different curb lines on this, parking aisle here, just from a feasibility and, it doesn't make it doesn't make sense to have a bend in this parking row, for example. I understand the concerns around the fact that the multi-use trail itself is plowed and snow storage ends up there anyways. I think the main concern is granting, this kind of waiver from those requirements, and then having trouble enforcing it for Meyer Lot 2 development, to be very frank. I would imagine with Meyer Lot 2, that is truly greenfield. I recognize that this site is kind of half greenfield, half renovation or change of use of an existing building. and there are constraints with where the existing exports building is located, and kind of formalizing the existing parking area. There's not much flexibility for the parking over here. There is greater flexibility over here, but given that it's kind of one contiguous site, the inflexibility for lot 1 carries over to lot 3, in a way. So I guess, my first reaction is I do think that extending the sidewalk out, so it's a consistent 26 feet drive aisle here, does make sense, and certainly can be considered. I can pull up the resolution unless there's other questions on the site plan.
No, and there wouldn't all be sidewalks. There could be some landscape in there too.
Sure, yes, I guess to clarify, I mean, they would
Yeah.
extend the curb line, but that could allow for sidewalk or landscaping in that area, yeah. So
Yeah.
to speak through the conditions as written, so just off the bat, condition number 3, which related to the building height, is going away, given the Board of Adjustments approval of the appeal. Going back to condition 2 related to the transit license area,
I think that can go away.
well, I would maybe suggest, in confirmation with Kent, that this condition maybe just be changed to not depict the license area on the plat. Not being here when the prior plat from 2021 was approved and recorded, and not necessarily understanding why it was depicted, that license was depicted on the plat at that time. I think staff is generally comfortable with the license simply not being shown, rather than being vacated through the plat.
So.
Yeah, and just
this
to
doesn't say anything about
clarify-
Being vacated,
Oh, go ahead, Ken. Yeah.
right?
Go ahead, Kent.
just to clarify, I haven't read this license agreement, so
Yeah.
before I would opine on it one way or the other,
Yeah.
it'd be nice to read it and see how to properly address it, if at all, on this plat.
So leave that condition for the town board then.
So
Okay.
Commissioner Souls, this is what is in reference here. It was this note to say, it says transit license to be vacated by this plat. I think that was the primary concern
Okay.
of staff.
That was a mistake.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So going back to the condition, number 2, staff is certainly open to rewording it.
Yeah, and the rewording, I'm sure this, as Clark said, it's as important to him as it is to the community, but just some sort of wording that a connection continues. So that this route from community to community has this final piece, so.
Something about it being formalized with discretion and conversation with the town and developer. Something to have it mentioned
Well,
because it is so important.
aren't they asking just to take it off of the plat?
Yeah.
And
Right.
then it's not affected one way or the other.
It's all vacant, right? That can be.
Yeah, I think our concern,
Those are
Could it be in the
developed.
plat notes?
Just not shown on the plat.
There's. Yeah,
our concern of it was just the setting the precedent of it going away. If we have assurance one way or the other that it's covered by the license agreement, I don't think we'd have any issue. Maybe at this point, it's just kind of further research and making sure that the town attorney is in agreement with kind of how it's being handled.
What I was gonna suggest is pretty much what Alan said, maybe change that resolution note to the town lawyer and staff will work with the developer on the license agreement. And that'll give Kent time to actually read it,
Yeah.
know what we're talking about, and I think then everybody will understand it. And if it's just something that simple,
Yeah.
generic, then when we come to the town board, if it's still an issue, then let's address it at the town board. How about that?
Yeah.
Does
great, Jay.
Yeah.
that work?
Yeah.
So here's how the condition has been reworded. The town attorney and staff will work with the developer to research and understand the nature of the existing 45 feet transit license area as depicted on the previous existing plat. So
Great.
simply directing staff to
Yeah.
work with the town
Yeah.
attorney
Thank you
on this
for
item.
whipping that out.
Thanks.
Um, Condition 3 relates to the trash enclosure, and requiring it that the trash enclosure, a trash enclosure be provided. It also speaks to reducing the width of the drive aisle to accommodate parking lot perimeter landscaping. I think maybe this is a section that can be reworded.
Yeah.
I'd say leave the trash enclosure, but work with staff to reduce the width of the drive aisle adjacent to Highway 40.
To accommodate more
Just,
landscape.
that's all it's gotta say, reduce the width of the drive aisle, because he's gonna he can add the additional landscaping.
Yeah.
He'll have that extra space.
Yeah.
And it sounds like
Or
the
you-
request is to have it not be perimeter landscaping
Right.
specifically, so
Right.
Yeah,
if that's the
and I
the
get that
direction.
along that stretch,
Yeah.
snow removal, it'll just crush everything.
So maybe something like to accommodate a landscaping between the proposed,
Or just
And
to
ex-
accommodate landscape.
okay,
Yeah,
sure.
just,
to accommodate landscaping. And then we can remove the section to the code reference to the parking lot perimeter landscaping.
Okay.
I would maybe suggest still including this last sentence, simply the landscape improvement shall be included to the maximum extent feasible.
Perfect. Yep,
Yeah.
that's good.
Okay.
Yep.
So with regards to the fees in lieu, I think this condition still leaves open determination of
I
that
agree.
yeah.
value
yeah.
per acre. I personally don't feel it's necessary to state it here, but if the planning commission would like to, I'm
No,
not.
I don't think
Okay.
it's
I'd like to
necessary.
leave it the
Gives
way
you
it is, and you guys can still work with.
We
Yeah,
absolutely will
figure that
still
out.
work with the applicant to
Yeah.
determine the appropriate fees.
Yep.
And then I believe, conditions 5, 6, and 7 are all fairly just our standard ones and
Yeah.
duration of approval. So
Okay.
good.
Any further discussion from the board? Entertain a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 2025-0202 with
This is
The one,
001, sorry. Wrong my hand.
Yeah.
01 with the changes as just noted
Conditions.
by our planner. Yeah, and changes in the conditions, just noted by our planner.
second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
Okay, can we move right to the last item, or do we need a break real quick, or?
now let's get through it.
Okay, Okay, let's go to the Village at Grand Park filing 3 final plat, and this require a public?
this is also a public hearing. Yeah,
I'm sorry,
this is also a public hearing.
okay, so.
I
motion
move
the
to
public
open
hearing.
the public hearing.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
possible order.
Okay, so staff report.
Thank you, Chair Miller and the Planning Commission, Garrett Scott, Town Planner. So the item before you all is the Village at Grand Park filing 3 final plat. Property owner is Grand Park Development LLC. This covers planning areas 1WA.1.3 and 1WB in Grand Park. The land uses that are proposed listed here are actually from the final plan development plan that was approved by the Board of Trustees in November for this area alongside the preliminary plat. And again, this request is specifically just for approval of the final plat document. Here is a look at what that plat looks like, creating a total of 17 new lots, as well as dedicating rights of way for various roads within the Village of Grand Park area. What may be a bit more familiar to you all is this image. It's the FPDP for this area as it was approved by the board in November. The applicant is still addressing comments on this FPDP in order to satisfy conditions of approval and is working with staff to do so. And once those comments are addressed, this FPDP may be recorded. This image is also from the FPDP, which was provided in the packet for reference, just depicting the various planning areas within Grand Park that are within this proposed development, 1WA in red and 1WB in green. And then this shows those areas of development overlaid with Google Earth aerial imagery just to give an idea of the extent of the development. Speaking to the review and approval timeline, I'll breeze over the first few. We all understand that the overall PDD was approved in 2005. Some initial FPDPs for the Village of Grand Park were approved soon after. This filing 2 final plat phasing plan was approved in 2011. Last year, starting in January through November, was the review process for applications related to planning areas 1WA and 2W. That ultimately resulted in an approved preliminary plat and FPDP that I mentioned for primarily 1WA, but also 1WB, approved by the board last November. The town staff received this final plat application in January, on January 10th, and we were able to complete 1 round of referral review ahead of today's public hearing. So public notice was provided in the newspaper by the town, and mailed notices were sent by the applicant on February 10th, and proof of those notices are in the packet. So now this is the real meat of the presentation, and again, a lot of this is outlined in the staff report, but I just want to emphasize the big picture review findings and staff's review of this final plat. So this section of the code referenced here allows for the approval of what is called phased final plats, essentially developments that once approved would actually be platted and recorded, and therefore lots legally created over a phased 5-year period, subject to the provision of infrastructure and dedication of either easements or rights of way for that infrastructure. So the idea is, if you have a large development, you're not going to build all the roads and water and sewer for it all at once. This gives the applicant and developer flexibility to develop portions of that development over time and naturally extend infrastructure in a logical way to the rest of the development. So as part of approval of a phased final plat, our code requires a phasing plan with estimated dates for recordation of plats and infrastructure construction. And for recently approved developments in Grand Park that were phased final plats, this information has actually been provided as part of the FPDP. So it's kind of maybe a bit of a quirky thing, but typically the FPDP for the entire development area gets recorded first alongside, say, the first phase of that plat. So I do think it makes sense for the FPDP to be the document through which this phasing plan requirement is documented. So just to speak to 4 examples, West Mountain Filing 1 FPDP, this is the phasing plan that's depicted on that FPDP, clearly identifies with the Roman numerals 3 phases, shows the geographic boundaries of those phases, as well as estimated dates by which construction would start and be completed for those phases. So some of the other developments that I'll speak to provide slightly less information. Here's Elk Creek Condos 4W1, still depicts generally, it depicts five phases, identifies an order to those phases, but it does have this note that says that phasing does not need to be constructed in this sequential order as long as the infrastructure is in place to support it. For Alpenglow at Grand Park, this FPDP simply identified phases 1, 2, and 3, doesn't provide any estimated dates. And the Meadows at Grand Park similarly just notes with the Roman numerals phases 1, 2, and 3. So speaking to the approved FPDP for this area, this is the phasing plan that was currently shown there. Staff provided a comment to the applicant that this phasing plan is somewhat ambiguous. There's a phase 1 depicted up here, as well as phases 1A through 1E for the lots here. These phases 1A through 1E are areas that are either already complete in the case of the gas station in Grand Park offices and the foundry, or currently under construction in the case of the Market Street buildings and the medical center. So it really doesn't follow a logical sequencing. It doesn't really make sense to have phases 1A through 1E and phase 1. So staff is simply requesting that this phasing plan be updated, include estimated dates of recordation, and actually reflect what's already been constructed or platted and what's yet to be completed. So this is really a condition of approval for the final plat, but staff expects this to be accommodated through an updated FPDP.
When you have those phasing plans, are there like deadlines for completion?
So I'll speak to maybe as we have this one up here. FPDPs, once approved per our current code, they never expire. So that zoning approval exists essentially in perpetuity. And once the document is recorded, that zoning approval is valid until it is amended, essentially. The duration of approval of a phased plat is 5 years. So any lots, any portions of the overall plat that are not recorded in that 5-year period would expire, subject to a possible extension that our code allows. But after that expiration period, anything that's remains unplatted would have to go through the subdivision plat approval process again. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's really the main deadline behind these phasing plans. Are there any further questions on this item?
So just like the red lines, is that just generally what those phasing areas are?
Yes.
Because I asked because like phase 1 and then 2A, you can see the road is delineated there, and then the road is not delineated into where it ties towards the rec center.
Sure.
So I'm just wondering how come it doesn't show the road on there?
Yeah. So I guess first the red lines generally follow lot boundaries as depicted on the preliminary and now the final plat. As far as why certain roads are grayed out compared to others, that's a valid comment. There doesn't seem to be too much rhyme or reason because some roads that are constructed, such as Old Victory Road in this area, are grayed out, whereas Main Street between Grand Park Drive and Second Street, which is not constructed, is also grayed out. And then you have some roads that, Grand Park Drive is already constructed, so maybe this should be grayed out. So I think that's also something that could just be cleaned up and clarified. Okay, so the next items that I'll speak to are areas of the existing Village at Grand Park development that do not conform with the town's subdivision regulations. These areas of nonconformity are proposed conditions of approval for the final plat. They should also be incorporated into the phasing plan and noted on the phasing plan as specified by staff. So I won't belabor this point too much, but because I believe it's been raised several times, both at the Planning Commission and the board. The Market Street buildings are not on platted lots. They are currently on this larger unplatted parcel, as shown here, kind of outlined in blue. So this is in violation of a section of town code that requires that building permits and construction only be allowed on platted lots. There are active building permits for these buildings. Certainly, town staff, the town will allow construction to continue under those building permits. We simply want to require that lots for these buildings be platted as soon as possible and essentially as the very first phase of this overall plat, and require that no other lots in the plat be recorded before these are. So just to emphasize that again, those lots are lot 10, 11A, and 11B, as well as the right-of-way for Market Street, which accesses these lots, as shown on the image in the left from the final plat. So again, just recording these plats for these lots should be depicted as the first phase of the phasing plan and should occur before any other lots are platted.
So the Market Street buildings are on lots 11A, 11B, and lot 10, but those lots are not recorded.
Correct.
Right.
Okay, the next item has to deal with dedication and conveyance of right-of-way. So town code requires that any public infrastructure, roads, water lines, sewer, etc., be placed in either an easement or dedicated right-of-way. Right-of-way can be dedicated when a subdivision plat is recorded. This is very common. Think about a single-family home subdivision that's accessed by a local street. It's very typical to plat create the right-of-way when you also plat all of those lots. With that said, town code also allows for rights-of-way to be dedicated when final acceptance of infrastructure occurs. So as a reminder, when a developer builds infrastructure that's ultimately public infrastructure, whether that's, roads, water lines, sewer lines, the town has this acceptance process where we inspect it to ensure that it was built according to the plans. And when that acceptance occurs, the very last stage of it, the right of way should also be dedicated to the town, essentially before or concurrently with that final acceptance. So there are several existing roads in the Village of Grand Park that have received final acceptance or will soon, as soon as this year, that are not in dedicated rights of way that I just want to discuss briefly here. So kind of going back in time to when some of these roads were built, this image is from September of 2009. This is around the time the rec center was built, as well as the gas station area. So the roads built at this time were this portion of Grand Park Drive, this portion of Market Street, and this portion of Main Street. I will note that Market Street, this section built here, does exist in dedicated right-of-way that is for the Village of Grand Park Owners Association. So that's a private road, privately maintained, not town maintained. There is a section of this portion of Main Street that lies in dedicated right-of-way. It's basically the portion from this red dot, the intersection with Market Street, up to the rec center property line. So this is in right-of-way, but the other portion of Main Street is not. There is also a portion of Grand Park Drive that is in right-of-way. It's simply this section from Highway 40 to Market Street. This other small section is not. Okay, so fast forwarding to 2014, this is around the time the foundry was constructed and additional roads were built. This portion of Market Street, this portion of Second Street, and this tiny sliver of Main Street. As it exists today, the only one of these that is in right-of-way is Second Street from Highway 40 out to Main. So I guess just backing up, given when these roads were built, circa 2009, 2014, they basically have all been granted final acceptance by the town. There's a series of resolutions approved by the board granting those acceptances, and therefore right-of-way should be dedicated for all of them.
But they have not been yet.
Correct.
Right.
Last thing I'll speak to more recently, June 2023 is when this image is from. Larger portions of roads were constructed around this time. Grand Park Drive, including the railroad underpass, Old Victory Road up to American Willow Drive to Telemark, and then this section of Main Street adjacent to the hospital development.
And that stretch of Old Victory Road there is not paved.
The line shown in purple is all paved. It's the section to the north that is
section of the north, right.
unpaved.
Yeah, from that intersection.
So in consultation with Public Works staff and in staff's review of previous board resolutions that granted acceptance, staff has determined that the lines shown in blue are roads that have had preliminary acceptance granted, whereas the lines shown in green are roads that have had final acceptance by the town. Now, the areas that are highlighted here are the areas with dedicated right-of-way. Most of it is public. The areas shown in red are rights of way that that were conveyed to the town. Again, that one exception is this pink area here, which is Market Street adjacent to the gas station. That's a private right of way, but open for public access. So staff is essentially stating that the areas shown in green that are not highlighted in yellow, these are roads that have final acceptance but no dedicated right of way. And right of way should be dedicated for these roads as soon as possible, essentially, again, as a first phase of this overall final plat before any other lots are platted. The lines shown in blue, they have preliminary acceptance. So right of way simply needs to be dedicated at the time of final acceptance, which is anticipated this year. Another thing that I just want to speak to is the presence of other utilities within the area. I mean, the applicant stated that there are utilities in the Village of Grand Park area broadly, which is true. The blue lines depict water mains within the area. The green depicts sewer lines. All the lots proposed as part of filing 3 can be served by these existing utility lines, except for lot 16, which is proposed in this area. Just needs a slight extension of the sewer main in order to reach it. So I think the main thing is the dedication of rights of way. Given that, the town is plowing these roads, the town is maintaining these roads in terms of restriping, repairing pavement and things like that. The last thing I wanted to speak to is more of a process or administration type of condition of approval, just to clarify, how plats would be reviewed moving forward when this overall final plat is approved. So any individual plats that are to be recorded would be reviewed administratively by town staff to ensure consistency with the overall plat. If there are modifications proposed, such as consolidation of lots, creation of additional lots, or modification of lot boundaries compared to this approved or this overall final plat once approved, then staff would determine whether those modifications constitute either a major or minor amendment to the plat, subject to the language in our code. So if it's a minor amendment, then it can be reviewed administratively by town staff and it doesn't need to come back to the planning commission or the board. If it's a major amendment, it does. So that's the distinction here. And this is what our code says. And really, I would argue it's quite broad. It simply says that a majority of these conditions must be met. So 3 out of the 5. And I think in general, it could cover things like lot consolidation, splitting a lot into that was proposed to just be one lot into 2 or multiple lots. So I do think it gives the applicant broad flexibility in this case to modify lot boundaries if necessary compared to the final plat. So just to give an example of this in practice, this occurred in 2019 with the recordation of lot 12C, which was the lot for the medical center. The image shown on the left was the approved filing to plat that depicted lot C in a certain shape and configuration. And shown on the right is the actual recorded plat for that lot. It is fairly consistent. I mean, obviously, the lot boundaries along Telemark Drive and the adjacent property can't change, but some of the lot boundaries adjacent to other Grand Park Drive or Grand Park properties, excuse me, were modified in order to accommodate the site design for the hospital, generally speaking. So this is something that my understanding was administratively approved, given that the changes to the lot as recorded were really not too significant from what was previously approved, and staff likely utilized the criteria in our code to consider it a minor plat amendment.
I have a question,
Sure.
if I may. I'm going back to the road where it narrows, when we talked about that, phase 1, across from the I had those photos at a previous meeting by the car wash coming out of the rec center and that tight turn, how tight it is. And I talked with Scott at the rec center and I said, so do you like this for slowing down traffic? And he said, no, it's dangerous. It's narrow, it holds up traffic when we have larger vehicles come through a truck. So making that modification, because I noticed that that lot kind of comes down and sticks out with that fall in here, would you staff be able to approach that when the time comes
Mhm.
and you go to build a hotel and change that access? Would that be something that would be
Isn't that
covered
the
by
private
this?
road?
That's actually not the private road, just to
No,
answer.
that's, it's part of, that's ours. That's the dedicated, recorded part of Main Street.
That-
Dedicated right away.
That's correct. And I think that absolutely can be addressed with the recordation of the proposed lot 4A. The lot boundary does kind of jut into that drive aisle very slightly. I think.
Yeah, if there's a way to just open that up.
Mhm.
So, but would that be something that, what you were just mentioning, that staff could take care of? It wouldn't have to come back to us? And you guys could just plan ahead, because this is something I'm not gonna let go of. I'm like a duck. I want that to be wider. Anyway, okay, that's
Yeah.
all I gotta say about that.
I think that's definitely, so any sort of modification of the lot for a boundary to give a little bit of extra room for that road is something that can be accommodated administratively, and I think it's something that staff will be on the lookout for when lot 4A is
Great.
platted.
Perfect, thank you.
Any further questions from the board?
No other questions from the board for staff then?
So just to conclude, staff recommends that the planning commission approve the resolution with the conditions as proposed. And once approved, the final plat will advance to the board for final approval.
Or from the applicant?
I don't have much to share on this one. It's a plat. I think, again, like we did last time, we'll kind of walk through some of these conditions of approval. Or let Clark walk through some of them. Sorry, I haven't shared my screen yet. You can start by sharing your screen.
Yeah, so I think I'll just start with the phasing plan. The phasing plan in this instance, there's not a timeline for any one of them, and it's purposeful that way because you can basically hopscotch, play checkers with it, whatever you want, depending on the user you may get. And depends on the market demands and investment in our community, but the intent is to set this up and go sell lots. We've put the large majority of the public infrastructure in. I think Garrett's covered that. But we would not, we would do the phasing plan in the same fashion we did in 4W.1 with a notation that, any one of these can be recorded at any given time, so long as the public infrastructure is there or a DIA is entered into pertaining to any infrastructure that that particular lot might require. Most of these lots already have the infrastructure and the roads adjoining them, but there are a few that do require some minor public infrastructure. So that's would be my comment on the phasing. We've done it this way pretty much for a long time, for a very, very long time on these phased big scale, large plats where you're creating a big lot with mixed use development or big multiple big lots with mixed use development, and it takes a lot of money and the right investor with the right design ideas for us to be able to sell one of those too and be willing to sell it to them. And it's worked pretty well. So, yeah.
If you're referring to how it's mentioned in the resolution, could you give us a number?
Well, I think it's on item 2. Applicant must provide information related to the proposed phasing plan for the sub is outlined in section 19.3.230. Because what I think I understood was Garrett wanted like timelines for when lots would get recorded. And we can't do that. Nor would we. There are 17 plats. 17 plats submitted to the town staff for review, which reflects plat for every single lot and phase that you show here. That allows me, for instance, if I had a another medical provider that came in and said, hey, we want that lot next to the medical center, we gotta record that plat. It's kind of how we derive the bowling alley theater, the foundry, that is the foundry, the rec center. My office, of course, was kind of designed right at the get-go. But I mean, bottom line is, having that flexibility allows us to jump when somebody in the market is looking to come and invest in our community and bring one of these are very expensive buildings to go build, very expensive. So that's the idea. And I don't see anything wrong with a phasing plan so long as the public infrastructure is either there or is well thought out and is addressed in a DIA if it's not associated with a
So-
plat.
This is pretty broad, though. It just says provide information. It doesn't say timelines.
It says outlined in section 19.3.230, which I think.
Yeah.
Says
I mean-
something about
Okay.
timelines.
Or one of the things that Garrett pointed out is at least note the lots that have been built on.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
we'll
so-
make some of
yeah,
those
yeah,
corrections.
just some of
That-
them,
No,
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah,
really just the
yeah.
timeline. And again, if this is a recorded document that never expires, having timelines on it, if I say, okay, we anticipate 2026,
No,
and it doesn't happen,
Yeah.
how does that all play out when a recorded document that doesn't expire?
Okay.
And so that's really, are we then not in compliance? Are we, right? You understand the,
Yeah, so I mean, bottom line is, I think we've got a well laid out plan and as you can see, almost all of the public infrastructure is there. And doing it the way we've always done it is the right way to do it. And particularly in a project like this that has mixed use buildings and lots of different types of uses. The next one that I want to touch on, development improvement agreements are fine with each plat, which is what we would expect. And it's what we've always done. And if there's something required with that plat, then we would put it in. If there's not anything required with that plat, for instance, it's got the road already built and the town's already accepted it and all the water and sewer and everything's in there, and we're not going to cut the road open because we already stubbed services into the lot, which we do have in a lot of these cases, then there's not going to be a DIA because all the improvements are going to be there, and your public works director is going to confirm with the planning department, yep. Yeah, the next improvement agreement that would come would be with the building permit application, right? So I'd go record a plat, sell it to you, Andy. You go design your building, you bring in the building permit application,
Yeah.
right? And then there would be requirements for landscaping and sidewalks and things like that that would be derived from the building permit application process, okay? That's kind of the proper order of business, and what we're trying to do is prepare lots to go sell them to other builders. Okay, other developers. So I won't be building all these. I've told you guys that a lot of times, but that's the goal. Okay, I may build a few of them, but and then regarding the right of ways, I just want to point. I'm a little confused because from the beginning of time, we've always had the town lawyers involved and the town planners, and we've done lots of these meetings, lots of public meetings. And I'm reading section 19.4-120 public right of way and easements. And it says, number one, all streets, water distribution, sanitary sewer collection, and stormwater facilities shall be located within a dedicated public right-of-way or easement unless otherwise approved by the town. Okay? So it's either a right-of-way or easement. And what we have in the village today is a complex approved by the town layout of easements with public infrastructure and granted rights of way for very good reasons. Some of it flexibility, some of it had to do with the town might not wanted to do snow removal at the time. Some of it had to do with the settlement on the railroad underpass, which I think Kent might have been involved in. But nonetheless, our intention would be as lots are platted, the associated right-of-way next to that would get platted with it, which is kind of, it could create a hopscotch, but you're already platting parts of an already existing easement. But we want to maintain the flexibility that we've structured there. I mean, I could have somebody walk in tomorrow and say, Clark, we want to buy, 4 lots, eliminate Main Street and build one giant, hotel resort complex here. And here's how we do it. Now, we're coming back in to visit with you guys about that, but that Main Street road that splits it is today an easement. It has water, sewer, storm in it. They'd have to relocate it, but they can do it without going through a complex right of way. And so I guess my question to Garrett is, Why do you think you need a right of way? And what does the town gain from a right of way that it doesn't already have?
Valid question.
I think it's simply to comply with our code requirement that right-of-way be dedicated when infrastructure is accepted by the town. I understand that functionally, an easement really serves the same purpose as rights of way, but I think it really serves to formalize the streets that are already there and that the town is already maintaining. The applicant's point about Main Street between Grand Park Drive and Second Street, which there's already water and sewer mains in that alignment, but that section of the road is not paved. That's a valid point. Obviously, we don't want rights of way dedicated for a road that is not paved and does not exist. However, what town staff is talking about is roads that are formalized that would take a great deal of effort to remove, reconstruct in a different location, and that would require additional approvals anyway through the FPDP type approval process. So I believe the intention is to formalize the roads that are already there, dedicate the rights of way to the town, and simply just be in compliance with our code, because it is not in compliance with our code right now.
Thanks.
Well,
So,
I
question-
I
let me
gotta,
ask
hang
you-
on a second, Andy. I
Well,
gotta
let me
take
ask a
issue
quick
with that.
question if you can,
Okay,
please.
go ahead, please.
Yeah. So we're plowing we're plowing streets that are not public, not dedicated rights of way. Is that a liability issue for us? Yeah, I mean, that's one example. I mean, I get it too, Clark. You're trying to
The
trying to
easement,
make it easier to change things if you do, but you're gonna come in with a huge plat that's gonna abandon some streets that are already in use. It's gonna take a process,
well,
and you wanna make the process as simple as possible, but still.
right.
Yeah.
But again, I differ. Garrett keeps saying this isn't in compliance. I'm reading from your code. And
Well-
it's section 19.4.120. It says or easements. Okay, guys? So if you're telling me for 25 years,
So
because we
it's
have
in
this in
conflict
rendezvous
with a
for
different portion of our
25
code?
years,
Okay.
with all of the public hearings, okay? All of the town board meetings, all of the planning commission meetings, right? All of the lawyers that I've paid, both at the town and for us, that for 25 years, what they've done is not in compliance with the code. And I'm reading your code. It says or easements. It says or easement. So with all due respect, Garrett, I am reading your code, and for 25 years,
Okay.
I highly doubt all of those people violated your town code.
But you're in for a subdivision approval tonight on this plat. So,
So what? I can do it via easements, Andy, and a lot of the easements already exist.
that's your opinion, but we've.
Well, but I mean,
Yeah.
Kent, does
We're
it
trying
say
to-
or easements? And are easements acceptable if they're written in the right fashion? Because you helped write some of them.
If I could maybe respond to that before Kent.
Yeah.
Yes, that section of the code says easements or rights of way, but it must also be read in conjunction with other parts of chapter 19, and the specific section of the code that I am referencing is section 19-3-460, item 3, regarding conveyance of improvements other than by dedication on a plat. And it says that conveyance shall be made prior to final acceptance of the improvements, i.e. conveyance of a right of way. So easements are acceptable up and until the point where the town grants final acceptance of infrastructure.
Okay, that's not true either. Because conveyance of infrastructure happens with a bill of sale. And you've got public infrastructure that crosses properties that are just not even in a road right of way. Right? They're easements. And your code even requires offsite easements for public infrastructure. So again, with all due respect, probably 30 people involved for 25 years didn't do this wrong. They did it in compliance with the code, and it's been done right. And there's no reason to be changing it now. It would further complicate things given all of the various easements that are there for good reason. And I would have to go pull every single one of them and read every single one of them and put it all together. And I see no reason to do that. When the town's already accepted all the public infrastructure, it's in operation. It works perfectly fine, and it was done for good reason. Ron McGowan was involved. Kent, I'm sure, was involved in the settlement on the railroad underpass matter, which is all by easement. And those roads are used by a lot of cars today. And here's the thing. Some of the easements are done because the former town manager didn't want to take on plowing of certain areas. And that was smart of him. Okay. And it stipulates in the easement what the responsibilities are, if I remember correctly. Those are really old, but I would just like to say, I don't think all those people have done anything wrong. And I think everything is in compliance with the code. And I completely disagree with Garrett, as would every single lawyer I've ever had involved in this project and the former town lawyer. So
Are these
let's
roads being
just,
maintained by the town?
no, not all
Or
of them.
not all of them?
No,
Okay.
they're
Okay.
not all maintained by the
Figured.
town.
Thank
Some
you.
are. Um,
Right.
the ones that
They're
are,
doing
the
the
ones that are
ones-
used for, public, like going to the rec center, I'm not even sure they plow that one right now. I gotta look and see. In front of my office, they don't. So like
that's
the
private.
road in front of my office does not get plowed by the town.
Yeah. that's
Our
a
people
private
take care
road.
of it. Well, a lot of people drive through that road
Yeah.
going to
It's
the rec
private.
center. I mean, we're not gonna get rid of it.
Yeah.
But that was, again, it was smart of the town to say, it kind of like is semi-related to the gas station and those facilities. And, would you consider Clark not giving that as a road right of way and instead including in the plat and grant an easement through it, for instance? Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's lots of reasons that all these things were done. And to sit here and say that they were done in violation of the code is just simply a false statement. And I don't appreciate it. And all of those very, very smart lawyers would not appreciate that either. So I think we're in compliance with the code. We would like to propose that as we plat lots, the associated road with that lot or to get to it, would get platted, in conjunction with that plat. So it would just get added in. That's easy. We frankly, Market Street was structured that way as a good example and is structured that way, when these get approved so that we could actually record those plats. For Market Street. Okay, it's got rights of ways for Market Street to be granted. Right now, it's got a temporary easement, I think, in place until such time as the right of way is granted. Because it's got water, sewer, and the town does take care of that road, I think predominantly because of the foundry, the parking, so on and so forth. And it's kind of a key connector road. And it is paved, and they did finally accept all those improvements. So in any case, that's my 2 cents on this. And the code speaks for itself. We're in compliance with the code. So the last item, I think,
Excuse me, on that
one more.
subject, would
Yeah.
you mind reading that portion of code again, Garrett?
I suggest, Joy, that this condition be left. And we get Kent and the town staff to look at this and see, or get a better opinion for the board when it goes to the trustee.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
thank you, Andy.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andy. This is the same one I just dealt with.
Yep.
Right? And what was the one? Hang on. Trying to wrap up here, guys. You're at 3. Okay. And guys, the Market Street, just so you know, the deal and it's in the building permit for Market Street is a CO won't be issued for those building shells until the final plat's been recorded. And I don't know if I have a final plat I could record today or not record. This will give us one that we for sure could record without any questions, but kind of hence the need to get this wrapped up. Okay. So, and I think we'll be looking for COs on those in October. I mean, it's just shells, but that's always been the target, and they're on track to do that. So just FYI, I don't really appreciate the idea that we wouldn't plat anything else, because I think it is contrary to the health, wellness, and economic development of the town. If a hotelier wanted a lot tomorrow and I wanted to convey it to them, you guys should want me to convey the lot to the hotelier, because you make a lot of money off of a hotel. Okay, so just my 2 cents. I'm all for economic development of our community and bringing in investors when we can get them interested in bringing dollars to invest here. Okay, so that's all for me. Thank you for the time. I appreciate it, Andy, and the planning commission.
So one question about the rec center, and Katie brought up one issue.
Oh,
And this is one of the only times we get to look at this whole neighborhood as a whole. And
Sure.
I appreciate the phased approach, but turning the traffic circle, which, you know, the plat turns the traffic circle and the drop off area into a key connection point to the hotels beyond, which is good. But getting to the rec center now is a challenge. And getting to the rec center when this neighborhood's built out is gonna be really difficult. We talked about it. Is there any hope for a connection at Rendezvous Road to the main parking
That
lot?
was going to be my solution.
Yeah.
However, it comes with a plan that that we withdrew. But you will see that again.
American Willow, but
American Willow
Yeah.
and development along the American Willow, which we believe we have the right to do. We withdrew it because it was more critical to get this approved and we
Yeah.
didn't want to have the controversy over that matter. And we feel like bringing it back in a much smaller, what is going to be now a very much smaller presentation to you all, was a more appropriate.
anyway, that should be on the radar, even if it's not American Willow, at least a connection.
But
to
but
that
that
lot. So,
that was
yeah.
the solution that I was going to bring up to
Yeah.
Katie
Yeah.
is, you know, we put in the road at Rendezvous
Yeah.
intersection with the four-way signal there and American Willow Drive across.
Mhm.
And we reserved through the rec district's land an easement
Yeah.
for a public road through there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway,
And we did that, you know, obviously knowing full well that one day we would want to make a connection through there. So
Yeah.
So that's
Uh,
already been done.
that's on the plat.
Okay.
That's in the dedication that we gave to the rec center. It's there. We have an easement.
Great.
They, you know, if we didn't retain that, they could say, no, we don't want to
Yeah, but
road through here.
that's
But
one of the challenges with a large subdivision plat like this that's gonna involve so much in the future is making sure it all works together.
100% agree. And
I
Andy,
know that's your interest too, Clark.
well, and
but
you know, I
protect the
can't
public
foresee
good.
everything, but I'm
Yeah.
like, I've done this a little while.
Yeah, no, you have.
And
but-
I literally eat, sleep, breathe when I don't sleep a lot, but pretty much all I think about is this project and what it could be and should be in the future. And when we're doing deals like the rec center, for instance, we try to catch everything that possibly could be
Yeah.
or might need to happen in the future. We don't get them all.
Yeah.
But, you know,
Well, that's
we
why we're
try
here
to be
too, is
pretty thorough.
We're trying to make sure we get them all. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
okay.
so in that case, I think we've got what we need to make that connection if we can get that approved.
Yeah.
And then I think it'll be good for everybody, frankly.
Okay.
There. So, okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys.
So any comments from the public? Anybody that's still awake? Okay. Motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Any further discussion by the board? By the commission?
So are we, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like we're kicking the can down the road on the conditions.
On the street condition, yes. Uh-huh. Yeah,
Or-
I think the building lots, that ought to be done sooner rather than later. That's for the Market Street buildings.
So I
So-
think Market Street, yeah, we think if you just added something in there, that the staff may make an exception if developer is offered a contract by the hotel or something that
Well-
would accommodate something that would come in immediately, not something that's
Yeah.
planned. It's coming in slow.
I think Garrett's concern is that it should have been done before the building
Yeah.
started being built.
Right, yeah.
That's the one.
And now it's,
Yeah.
you know,
It's out of conformity.
How long does it take to do that, to plat?
So the process to plat and record lots for those buildings would essentially be after this overall plat is approved by the Board of Trustees. Well, the applicant is already furnished and
Which would be
provided.
tonight with our conditions.
Correct. This, if approved, this is anticipated to go to the board, the second meeting in March.
Okay.
The applicant has already furnished, plats for, I believe, the lots for the buildings themselves, but not the kind of plaza lot in between the two buildings. I mean, essentially, since staff already has those in hand, we could simply review, if those are the plats to be recorded, we could review those against the overall plat. I believe they're wholly consistent with each other. And essentially those plats could be recorded basically immediately after overall final plat approval is granted by the board for this. So, I mean,
So 3 weeks to a month. Yeah.
technically. I would maybe say April, just to be more conservative.
Okay.
Um,
Just
And
leave
he
that
wouldn't
condition as
necessarily
is.
have to do anything for that plaza.
no,
Right.
that is a fair point. I mean, yeah, it's a separate lot, but the buildings themselves don't touch that middle thin
Right.
lot.
And
So
there's nothing being built on.
Yeah, so the concern is lot 10 and lot 11A, not
Uh-huh.
necessarily 11B.
I think that's a fair assessment. Yes.
Okay.
So I have the condition of approval up here. I have that last sentence highlighted. The applicant is correct that the town will not approve their certificates of completion of their current building permits until those lots are platted. So that is a hard deadline. I will be frank, prior resolutions by the Fraser board have required those lots to be platted under certain timelines, and it never happened.
Okay.
I do understand the concern about if a potential buyer for any of the other lots in filing 3 comes along, this condition would effectively prevent that buyer from purchasing a lot until the Market Street buildings are platted. I think staff's strong recommendation is just to require those plats be recorded and place the strictest conditions possible
Yeah.
to do so.
Get it done.
Yeah, they need to stay on there as a
It's been
condition.
a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, because somebody wants to buy one of those lots, it ain't gonna happen in 30 days anyway. Closing on the lot.
So I think just to close the discussion on this condition, is everyone on the commission with comfortable leaving this last sentence here?
Yep.
Certainly subject to, final approval by the board, but I think
Yeah.
it's,
Okay, your
yeah.
town board approval.
Backing up to the earlier conditions, I think condition 2, staff has no objections to, not providing specific dates as part of the phasing plan. I think that's fine. But I think the phasing plan should reflect platting of the Market Street building lots and dedication of rights of way as the first phase, essentially. So I've added this sentence here in bold, simply just saying that the applicant does not need to provide dates for proposed recordation of everything else. But I think so long as the phasing plan is consistent with the other requirements, specifically conditions 4 and 5, I think staff would be acceptable to not requiring dates. I mean, it's a valid point by the applicant that,
Okay.
yeah, so. And then condition 3, I just added for each plat to be recorded, just to specify that as plats are recorded, staff will evaluate the need for development improvements agreement.
Any other discussion?
And on condition 5, can we just approve it and add something that ends the final language approved by the town attorney and staff, or leave it as is?
I
okay with
my
that.
preference would be to leave it as is and
Yeah.
have staff confer with Kent about this ahead of the
Yeah.
board meeting.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Call for a motion.
I move to approve resolution 2025-0202 with the changes that Garrett has made.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
I don't find anything after that one, so.
Business not on the- oh, wait, is that it?
Any further business or anything, folks, or?
No.
Any, a motion to adjourn?
I'm to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Awesome, thank you.